Welcome back to another episode of our FAQ in HTML with HTMX, C++, Google Spreadsheets, and Docker. Okay, it's part 4, so we're going to write to a Google Spreadsheet today. In the last episode, we saw how we could read from a Google Spreadsheet using API key. In today's episode, we're going to see how to write to a Google Spreadsheet, and for that we are going to need and use a GWT token. You can pronounce JOT, but I will call it GWT, I guess. Maybe JOT, maybe I will switch between the two. GWT token, because API key is for reading purpose only, and GWT allows you to read and write. So today we are going to write, so we need a GWT token. Let me first show you how we're going to do that. So I'm going to present the kinematic of our process, and then I will show you how to create a service account and a private key on the Google console, Google Cloud Console. Then we are going to see how we can modify our existing code base in order to call to implement the kinematic. Okay. And lastly we are going to modify our front end part, the template, to add a form to submit a new question. So here is our kinematic. To create a GWT token, we need a service account and RSA key. You can see, need a service account and a private key, and the method will return a GWT token. We're going to use for that a library called GWT-CPP to create this token locally. Then we will make a call to the O2 Google API with a GWT token provided, and it will hopefully respond an access token. So it is that part. Okay. Finally, this access token will be issued with the headers of our call to the Google Sheets API, and the requests body will contain our new row to be appended at the end of the document. It is that part. So if everything went right, the API should return HTTP code 200 OK. And the new line should be added at the end of our spreadsheet. Okay. So I will show you how to create our service account in the Google console, how to modify our Google Sheet data access .hpp we created last time, how to add a new route /question to our backend to handle requests to create new questions. And we will be modifying our template, our mustache template, to add a form in order to submit a new question through our website. That's a lot of work for today, so let's get going and do it together. Okay, so firstly we're going to create a service account and a private key. In order to do that, we have to go to our Google Cloud Console at the corresponding URL. In the menu, you go to the API and services, then credentials. Okay. Here you have manage service accounts. You click on that. Then you create a service account. You give it a name, service account name, then create and continue. You can add a role to our project set to owner. Then click continue. Then you click on done. Then at the end of the row, column actions, you have actions here. You have 3 dots. You click on the 3 dots and you click on manage keys. Then you click on add key, create a new key, you select JSON key and create. Okay. As you can see, something has been downloaded to your download directory. It is a private RSA key we are going to use later on. Okay. Then we need to add scopes to our account. So you go to API, back in the menu, API and services. Then you go to OAuth consent screen. So you go to OAuth consent screen. Then you create or modify your consent screen. So you fill in the information like app name. You add the email of the contact. Go save and continue. And in the scope, you can add or remove scopes. And you search in the list for the Google Spreadsheets API. Okay, Google Sheets API. It allows you to see, edit, and create and delete all your Google Sheets spreadsheets. Okay, you tick this case, and then you click on update or save, and you should see in your sensitive scopes, you should see the Google Sheets API on the list. Okay, and you click save and continue, and you go back to dashboard. Now we should have enough information to build our GWT token. Okay, welcome back. So now we have enough information to build our GWT token. So let's do that. In order to do that, we are going to modify our tools.hpp file. It is a utilitary class we created in the past episode. It is containing a static function that are helping us to build our application and do specific stateless things. And so we are going to add a function to create our GWT token from the information we get from the Google Cloud Console. So let's do that. Let's do that quickly. So let's take a look at what this function is doing. So we have many parameters. We have an issuer, a scope, an audience, and a private key. And we set the different parameters to create our token and return it. The function is returning as a token as a string, and we're going to use that for our purpose. Okay. Then we're going to open our main.cpp file and use this method in a program in order to check if it's functioning normally as expected. Okay. So let's do that here. So what do we do here? Please ignore the errors. They're not relevant. So we call our function with our Google account coming from the config file. The second parameter is the scope we added to our account in the console. So the scope is the Spreadsheets API. We have the third parameter, which is fixed value, asking for an access token. Okay, that's the type of token we are asking for. And the last one is a private key, coming also from the configuration file. Okay. So we are going to store those information in our config.json we created last time because it's convenient that way. And let's do this. So the Google account we created, you can go back to our console and find it in credentials. Okay, this is that information you're looking for. So you copy and you paste it here. And for the private key, so you have to open the JSON file we saw earlier. Let's open it. Okay. And the private key is between those quotes. Okay, private key. You can open it in raw data like that, and you copy and you paste it. Okay. Okay. So it is sensitive data because it allows you obviously to modify the Google spreadsheet. So it's a very sensitive data. So when you deploy your application in production, you have to be sure that these information are accessible only to allowed people. Okay, you have to take the security measure corresponding to the sensitivity of this kind of information, of course. Okay, so I guess we're good to go. We're going to compile and try to. Oh, firstly, I have to display it because I'm doing nothing with this token. So let's do something with the token. So let's display it in the console. So cout rjwt token and end line. Okay. And now we can build. Okay, now that our program is built, let's launch it. And if everything went fine, you should see something like that, which is our GWT token built with the provided information, Google account, and the private key, signed with the private key. And now we must issue a call to. We should try. We could try to call the OAuth 2 API in order to see if this is working. Okay, let's issue a call. In the session part, so as you can see, we call the O2 Google API, and we add at the after the assertion parameter, we add our GWT token. So when you call the O2 API with your GWT token in the assertion part, you retrieve an access token, as I explained in the kinematic at the beginning of this episode. Okay, so now we're going to store this access token and use it in order to call our Google Spreadsheets API to add a new line, you know. Okay, for that we are going to modify our Google Sheets data access. You remember the last time we modified this, we created the function getAllValidated, reading with the API key from the spreadsheet. And today we're going to modify, to fill in the create question method, because that's what we do today. We create a new question. So to do that, we have many things to do. The first thing to do is to add a private field in order to store different values we need. As you saw in the example, we need many things. So I'm going to add those things. So we need a private key, obviously. We need a service account. This parameter this attribute is a timestamp representing the moment in time until our token is valid. Because access token they are valid for a certain span of time, and we obviously are not going to ask for access token each time we call the API, you know. So we're going to store our access token, and this access token will be reused for each time we need to call the Google Spreadsheet API, and it's not until the access token becomes invalid that we are going to ask for a new one. So we need to store the time until the timestamp until our access token is valid. So this is that's what this field is for. Okay. Then we have a last one, which is the access token itself. Okay. So I'm going to modify the constructor of the class accordingly. So I have new fields to add. Now we have to add the method to retrieve an access token. So let's add this method here. Okay. So what does it do? So it checks if the token is absent or if the current timestamp is above the limit of validity of our access token. If it is not the case, we do nothing. This method do nothing. If it is the case, we create a new GWT token as we saw previously in the main.cpp using the private field service account and private key. It's the same thing we've done in the main.cpp and we've done with curl before that. Okay. Then we call the OAuth2 API to request a new access token. It's the same thing we've done with curl. Okay. And if the body is not empty, we should check the HTTP return code too, but I haven't done that, but you should check it too. We could add, let's add it. Okay. Okay, we retrieve our access token from the body response and we update our local access token field with that. Okay, and we update our access token timestamp with current timestamp, and we add 30 minutes to the current timestamp, which means that our access token will be valid for 30 minutes. Okay, that's what we do in this function. So we're also going to need to add our tools into our tools.hpp method in order to manipulate the current timestamp, as we saw in the previous class. So let's add this method. So it's just a method that takes some minutes to add in parameter. By default, it adds 0 minutes. It takes current time with the system clock, and it adds added minutes, and it returns the final time as a timestamp. That's all. So now that we added our way to retrieve an access token, we're going to use this access token in our create question method. So let's do this. Let's implement our create question, and then so firstly let's do it together. I will not copy paste. I think it's the core of the tutorial is here. So regarding our backend and regarding what today's episode, it is the core of what we are going to do. So let's call our method to retrieve the access token. We saw that this method does nothing if it's not necessary, if the local access token is already valid. So we can call it each time, and she does the job at knowing if we need a new access token or if it's okay with the current access token. So we can call it anyway. So we call it anyway. And yeah. Oh, there's another method I have to. We are going to add it later. Let's do this. Let's do this. Unsigned int. It is a number question, and I want it to be randomly generated. So we are going to add a random unsigned int number generator to our tools. Okay. Let's do this. So what does this method do? You take the current timestamp, which will act as a seed for a random number generator, and we put the uniform distribution, which limits the fields, the range of the generated numbers. It is limiting this range to 0 and unsigned int max number, which is what we want because we want to return an unsigned int. Okay. Then we call the generator, and which generates a random with the seed, which is the current timestamp is different each time we call it. So we hopefully we will have a different number, a random number each time. There is a risk of collision, of course, but for the example, it's more convenient to do that. I strongly advise you to, for a production solution, to use a UID generator or something like that. We could have done that here, obviously, too. UID, or you can retrieve the max of the number of questions and add one. It works too. Obviously, you cannot rely on the unicity of this value, so you have to handle it one way or another. But in this tutorial, we are going to do it just like that. You get the idea. You have to fill a number, question number. So that's what we do. And after that, we need an object that represents our new question. So it is a JSON object, and we're going to populate with some data. And those data, they represent the request we're going to send inside the body of our request for the Google API spreadsheet. Okay, spreadsheet API. So there are three parts. I'm going to show you the three parts. Here are our three parts. First part is our range. So the range, it represents what cells we are going to modify. So we have to specify the tab, the sheet. It is the same tab we used precedently to read. We have to add a range of cells. So it is A1 to D1, because if you open the spreadsheet, you will see that the range is A to D column, and that's why we specify A1 to D1. The major dimension is it represents the kind of objects you're going to submit. So we submit rows. It is like an enum. There's a set of values you can put here, but we put rows. And the last but not least field is the data of our new question. So it's the data of the row as a JSON object, an array of objects. Okay, so we have the num question, which is the first row, the question itself, which is the second row, the answer, response, which is the third row, and the visibility, show yes or no, true, false, which is the last row. And that's our new row data. Okay. And we print to the console, to the terminal, just to keep track of what is created. Then the last thing to do is to initiate our call. But before that, we have something to fill in the headers, which is our access token. You remember the access token we retrieve? We have to put it somewhere. Okay. So how do we do that? You have to put it in the field in the header that is called bearer. authorization bearer than the access token. It is the local access token, which is valid because we called our method, private method, just before. Okay. Okay, so to initiate our call, we use the HTTP client library we used in the precedent episode. And we append our range to, let's close this one. Okay. So we call the Spreadsheets API we did. Spreadsheet ID is the same ID we used before. Tab is the same tab. We had the range like we did for the content. And we use append value option raw data options insert rows, and we use the post method. Okay, before we use the get. Now to create a line, it's a post method. We pass on the headers with the authorization bearer, and we pass as a body, the request body, we pass the dump of our JSON object we created with our data. Okay, we return true if everything is okay and false otherwise. So we with status. I used code down below. I'm going to modify it, but it's status. Okay, so I have something like res code. Yes, and it is status. Okay. So as you can see, this should work, and we need to add the include to up here for the tools library because we never use it before. We have to modify something else, which is our main.cpp. First, we remove our GWT token generation from here, as well as our mock data access, as we don't need them anymore. So line 13, we don't need that, and this line, we don't need that anymore. But we have to modify our we modify our constructor of Google Sheet data access because we added the Google account and the private key from the configuration. So we had to add those fields. So here it is. Remember? And now our constructor is valid because the parameters are correct. And we have a route to add to our application because the existing route is only to read the questions, and now we are creating a new question. So we are going to add a new route. So here is our new route. It is /question, listening for the post method, because we create something in the REST API standard, let's call it that way. The post method is for creating new things. The get method is for retrieving things, and the post is for creating new things. So we listen for the post method and the slash question root, and we are going to call our data access layer the method create question from here. So let's add some code in the lambda that handles that root, and inside here. Okay, let's add some code. So we define a string, which is the return value that will be issued to the caller, and we retrieve the body params of the request containing the new question. Okay. The question must be in the field input question. We need to know that for later. And we call our data access layer after making some checkings. And lastly, we return our value. So we check if the question is not empty, and we check if the question length isn't above 200. You can put anything you want. It must be just a limit. Then we call our data access create question, passing our question, which is a string. And if everything went right, we put OK in the return value variable. In any case, we return the return value to the client caller. In HTMX, it means that the content of the div will be updated with the string returned by the method, the API. Okay, but we are going to see that in a moment. First, we are going to compile this this example. Okay, so it is compiled. Let's run it and test it with curl. So how do we test something like that with curl? With the -x, you specify the HTTP verb, which is post. You specify the localhost address with the root question, and with --data, you specify the content of the body of the request. So you put the name of the field in the form. It is input question equals the value. So let's put something in uppercase, for instance. And as you can see, the response is 200 OK from the backend. You can see the new question, which is issued to the Google Spreadsheets API, the response. And from the client side, we have the OK string, which is returned. Okay, so now we can open our spreadsheet. And as you can see, the line was added to our spreadsheet. Let's do another test if you're not convinced. And let's check. Okay, it's working as expected. So now that our backend is working as expected, we can modify our template to add the form that will make the users able to call our backend directly from the website. So let's open our mustache template. It is faq.mustache.html. And let's go just before the body closing tag. So here. And add some code. Okay. We have some form that we added. So we add this part of the code. Okay. This is a div with an ID, ask question, a title, and a form. The form contains two input fields, one input field and one button. And as I said earlier, the content of the div will be replaced by the answer from the API, our backend API, I mean. So after we click on the button. So the form contains a required input text field named input question, which is the expected parameters name at the backend side, as we saw earlier in our curl test. We also limit the size and the length of our field. And we add a placeholder to guide the user for input. And the field is required. It means that the form cannot be submitted if nothing is input in this field. Okay, if the field is empty. Lastly, we add a button with some interesting HTMX attributes. So we have the HX validate set to true. It forbids the form submission until all client-side errors are cleared. Okay, so here the input field is required. So the user must fill some text before the form can be posted. The HX target is an ID of an HTML element that will be updated by the answer of the API, local API, backend API. So here we put the parent div ID, which is this div as question. Okay. It means that everything will disappear if the answer is when we click on the button, everything will disappear. The form will disappear, and it will be replaced by the answer of the API. Okay. And the HX post is the actual verb post and API URL, the root, the crow root we define in the backend. So that's this is how in HTMX you write forms and target where we're going to update the DOM with the answer. It's pretty simple, and we have 0 JavaScript to write. Okay, so let's save. And let's check with Firefox this time, because so we start the backend, we go to localhost FAQ, and as you can see, we retrieve our question with the API key, so that's the previous episode, and now the current episode is about asking your own question. So you can add your question. This is my new question. And you click on ask question, and the response is okay, and it is updated in the content of the div. So if you go to the FAQ spreadsheet, you can see your new row that has been added, and you can display by switching the Boolean show from false to true, because if you go back here and refresh, you see the new question, okay? And you can answer, of course. It's meant to be answered, so that's the point of this application, is to answer a question people visiting your website ask. So what is your question? You answer whatever you want. Whatever you want. And if you go back and refresh, you see the answer. Okay, that's neat. Let's hide this one because you see, that's clean. Okay, so I think that's all for today. And next time we will add some bonuses to our solution. So I will show you how to host it behind an Nginx reverse proxy as a Docker container. And cheers. Let's see you next time.